Hey everybody, welcome. Give us just a few minutes to get everybody in that's going to be speaking. I'll get everybody up, get the host settled, and we'll get started.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Thanks, Peanut Butter. Soon we're going to start. Happy to be here with all of you. Let's talk a lot today about art in the Metaverse. Very excited to start. Welcome. David is here. We have Jean also from ArtNet. We have so many amazing people here listening to us today.
Hi Gigi. Hi everyone.
Hello. We have Show Studio also here. And Peanut Butter, you let me know when we can kick off, and then I'm going to introduce everyone and our co-host, DavidCash.
Can we add ArtNet as the co-host?
Yeah, I can. Are they in the space?
Hi Sasha.
Hello. Here we have ArtNet. So David, here you are here with us, and today you're also co-host, bringing your amazing questions and eloquence to the table. How are you doing? I think you have to bring David as a speaker. I don't know if that's possible, or if we can only have 4, right?
No, I could bring more speakers. I didn't see them request yet. I don't see them in the list either here. If you request, I could bring you up, David.
So please, DavidCash, Show Studio, those should be here with us.
And also Sasha Styles and Willie Guy. They are also our speakers today from ArtNet.
It seems David already requested, so let me know, Peanut Butter, if you got it.
Hi, Jayan. Hi, Gigi. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Hello, Sasha. Welcome.
Happy Metaverse Art Week.
Absolutely. Super happy we're all here. Super in the mood, and I'm so happy that we're together to really make this debut unforgettable to everyone here on Twitter Spaces. So I think that maybe I'm going to slowly make the introductions of our Twitter space today, especially while Peanut Butter is finalizing the setup. And on behalf of the Decentraland Foundation and the community, I really would like to thank you all for coming with us in this journey. I think that this third edition of the Art Week, the Metaverse Art Week, is really trying to push the boundaries, and amazing to have Show Studio and ArtNet with us in this, trying new things, really fulfilling new purposes. And it's beautiful to have collaborators like you all, like Cash Labs also. So today, our main theme is to discuss like performance and the new boundaries of performance and the arts and the metaverse. And for that, we're going to have amazing co-hosts, among them ArtNet, DavidCash, and also Show Studio will participate. And I would love to listen a little bit of each one of you so we can start this amazing conversation. So maybe let's start with ArtNet, and then David, you can take over also.
Yeah, sure. I'm Jiang from ArtNet. It's really honor. It's such a pleasure to be partnering with Decentraland this year for the Art Week. We are also super excited. I think this partnership comes really natural for us, actually. For those who don't know, ArtNet was actually the first art company ever online. We were founded in 1989. So it's over 30 years now, and we were actually also the first company that trying to introduce internet to all the galleries, auction houses. We were the first to collect auction data, so to bring transparency to the art market. So we have been through the times that when people are totally in not believing internet as a technology is going to work. And I think this is a similar situation that we are seeing either in NFT or when we're talking about virtual platforms. So I think there's a lot of similarities, and it's a natural fit for us to partner with Decentraland, and it's also the first time we are actually venturing into the metaverse. I love our little ArtNet information center so much. It's the probably the most creative project that I've ever worked on. To be able to just brainstorm like how we can actually build a little ArtNet gallery or architecture in a 3D environment. And it's just I rarely work on something that that is just around so much creativity. Yeah, so super happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And I think that it's important to highlight, Jane, that ArtNet is really coming with amazing activations and a beautiful program of performances, poetry, and also panel talks. So maybe later on this conversation today, you can bring some of those to us so people know a little bit more about those.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. Thank you. David, I would like to give the word to you as you're going to be one of our co hosts today, helping us to go deeper into the discussion of the metaverse and performance.
Thank you, Gigi. Hello, hello, hello. How is everybody doing? I hope everybody's having a lovely Wednesday, whether you're on your lunch break if you're in EST, if it's morning if you're in PST, if it's evening if you're in the UK, or if it's really late at night if you're in if you're in Asia. I appreciate you joining us wherever you are in the world, as this is very much a global audience. It's always a pleasure getting to hang out with the DCL audience. And the DCL community, and also so many amazing people up on stage today. We have ArtNet, we have Nick Knight, the one, the only Nick Knight. We have Tom from Show Studio as well, I believe, here as well representing. And we have a ton of the core team of Decentraland, the core team. We have Toonpunk, the one, the only. Sam, the creative director. I mean, I am a curator for the Decentraland Foundation, but this week is very much Sam's vision. So I'm very happy to have him here and to have him up on stage. And I would love to pass it over to him shortly. Also, we have Maria and Gigi from the DCL Foundation as well, people that this event would not happen without. Of course, also Peanut Butter leading the charge as well in the DCL account. It's family here. I mean, it's really a great family here at Decentraland. We're very happy to have you joining us for the third annual Art Week. This is the third one. We're very excited to be back here again. Look it up, check out what we did last year, but this year we have a whole bunch of amazing stuff planned. Gigi can tell you more about it, but we already have a bunch of programming live. A whole bunch more programming is going live over the course of the week. I've had the pleasure to bring a bunch of artists into the fold, but there are so many organizations at play here. ArtNet, of course, Sotheby's, we have Known Origin, Maker's Place, Super Rare, all of the regulars, Rareable, all of the folks who make Web3 happen have really contributed this year to Art Week as per usual, making it happen and making it exciting for everybody. So over the course of the next 5 days, I believe, 24th to the 28th, I do believe, I hope that you all take some time to explore Decentraland, look into all of the incredible programming that Gigi has created. We have some stuff popping up live as well this evening and tomorrow at the Cash Labs Gallery. I hope you will join us, and as well in the main curation. I'm going to let Gigi tell you more about it, but it's really exciting. We have some massive scale sculptures, some of the biggest form artworks ever seen in Decentraland. I'm really excited to see it take off, and some incredible experiences by folks like ArtNet. They're really incredible. They're experiential. They take things to a whole new level. Shibu, as per usual, blew it out of the park. And the whole Decentraland team really blew it out of the park. So anyway, I don't want to talk too much. I'd love to pass it back to Gigi and get the conversation going. But before we do, Gigi, is there anybody else we want to pass it over to before we kick off the conversation? Sam, maybe?
Well, yes, I would love to bring Sam so we can start the discussion really with his vision and the theme of this event, as it was especially created by him as the main curator and creative director.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for that amazing introduction. I don't know if I deserve that. First of all, this has been a hugely collaborative experience between the foundation, the community, all of the partners that we've brought in for this year. And it's so nice, it's only 2 years ago since we did the first one. This is the third one. And it was such a tiny event, and it was really handcrafted and for the community, and it's incredible how far we've come in the last 2 years. So well done everyone for that. I'd just like to take a moment to, I guess, say where the inspiration from this year came from. A big shout out to the Airist crew. They invited Decentraland and David as well to the Venice Biennale this year, and really inspired us with great shows, and also a chance to get to meet the artists behind those shows. And in conversations with Studio Drift, the real theme for this year's Art Week came out of those conversations. And so a massive thanks to them for being such an inspiration, and hopefully we'll be doing more artwork stuff with them in the future. The theme, everyone's read about it, and it's really important. I've seen it in a few digital art experiences where I've had this kind of goosebump feeling of something kind of beyond the normal. And when we saw the Studio Drift show in Venice, we all felt that. We watched a room full of people like literally cry with emotion because the show was so powerful. And I wanted to get underneath why that was. And the truth is, if you use the mathematics of nature inside digital art, then the human spirit is somehow open to that in a different way that it would be not open to normal artworks. And this is why we get these kind of physical feelings of joy, I think when you look inside the plaza this year at some of the artworks that have been created for this event, I hope you all get those feelings too, and you understand why mimicking nature in the metaverse is actually a really powerful thing. That's all I've got to say. I talked a lot, sorry.
No, Sam, it was beautiful. I think everybody got emotional with your speech, especially because you always talk with your heart, and that's what keeps us motivated and move forward with amazing vision that you bring to us. Thank you. So I would love, actually, David, maybe we can bring a little bit now from Show Studio and Nick Knight, which I think it's an honor to have them here with us. And then after that, let's do a round based on some questions we have prepared for this conversation.
Yeah, we have both Nick Knight and Tom, I believe, on the Show Studio account right now. Tom Waintrick. Nick, how are you? We have pieces
I'm
from
good, thanks, David.
displayed live in the Metaverse right now. How are you feeling? Very, very happy to have you here, and happy to have you as a part of Art Week this year.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm just taking a little break from editing, so it's a nice welcome break, to be honest. I'm very pleased to be here and very chuffed that you allowed me to talk. But I'm not quite sure what I can add to stuff about some questions. We're working, just so people know, we're working on our first NFT release later this year, which will sort of act in a way to allow you to have something of mine, which hopefully you'll like. And also as a sort of almost like a ticket into the world of Show Studio and all the future events we're doing and the stuff we're doing with. So we'll keep on posting on Discord and keep on posting on Twitter and stuff, just to tell you what's going on. But we work with somebody who I think is incredibly exciting, who I found probably about 5 years ago on Instagram, who's called they go under the name of Ugly Worldwide. And I think they're one of those people who I'm seeing more and more of as the fashion world is changing, and I think probably changing for the better. You're seeing people popping up on Instagram and elsewhere who are really just doing it for themselves. They're not waiting for a kind of like a backer or a platform that's going to force them to be something else. They're just doing what they think is the thing that they love. Giselle is really, I guess, traditionally you'd see them as a model, but what I've always found a little bit objectionable about the term model is it implies that a person is some sort of blank canvas, that a photographer and a stylist and an art director just sort of impose an identity on. And I think with Giselle, what I really love is the fact they come with their own fully formed identity, and we're trying to put them right at the sort of, really the authorship of this, so that it's them that are driving this as much as I am. And I'm much happier with that balance of relationship. From working in the fashion industry for 40 years, you do get a little bit feeling like, well, this doesn't seem quite right. I think I won't do a huge monologue here, but I think that the fashion industry and the fashion world is really changing. It had been overdue for change for a long time. And I think COVID, which was and is a revolting disease, I would hate to say it had any redeeming features, because I don't think it does. But one thing is it forced people to, and encouraged people and persuaded people to start looking at the world in a slightly different way. And I think that change is healthy. And I think for the fashion world, that's a really needed change that needs to happen. I'm finding more and more people who are out of the sort of, the kind of New York, Paris, London, Milan fashion show system, who are showing their designs as they want to show them, when they want to show them, to the genders they want to show them, and to in the seasons they want to show them, the ways they want to show them. And I think the fashion industry was so rigid before. It really, it's ridiculous when we have these seasonal fashion shows, menswear and women's wear. It just feels so outdated. So, long ranty spiel, but anyway, delighted to be here. So I don't just spiel and rant. If anybody asks any direct questions you want me to answer, I'm happy to do that.
Fabulous. No, well, we really appreciate you being here, Nick. I mean, I think I speak for everybody saying that it's hardly a rant. It's an honor to have you as part of this space.
You're very kind. Thank you.
And I'm sure we have some questions. And also, I feel like, I was just reading the back end chat with the DCL team. I think there are a bunch of similarities with ArtNet in terms of, bringing a longstanding practice or longstanding practices into the metaverse. But before I pass it over to ArtNet and maybe open it up to the first round of questions, which I'd love for you to be a part of, Nick,
Sure.
I would love to pass it over to Tom in the Show Studio account. Tom was involved in helping digitize these NFTs to create a lot of the elements, and also to bring one of the Icon One sculptures into Metaverse Fashion Week. Sorry, Metaverse Art Week. My brain's still back in Fashion Week. But Tom, how are you doing? Are you with us? And would love to quickly hear from you if you want to share anything about joining us for Art Week or Icon One in general.
Hi, David. Yeah, I'm here. Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, it's exciting to see. I just jumped in this afternoon to see what's going on in Art Week in Decentraland. It all looks amazing and exciting. And yeah, great to be here. I think it's a good point. I think having Nick talk about Show Studio and ArtNet, there really is a kind of correlation between how those two, Nick with Show Studio and ArtNet, the two kind of organizations. The previous speaker from ArtNet was kind of talking about how kind of using the internet before people realized what a thing the internet was going to be, and just the recognition of that and the metaverse and blockchain, etc., how it feels very, very similar. So I'm excited to see where this conversation goes.
Fabulous.
Incredible.
Yeah, Gigi, please go ahead.
No, I just really wanted to, maybe now we could pass the word to Arnett and Jean and Sasha, because maybe we could go to one of the first topics I would love to touch upon, which is really the opportunities that the metaverse brings to the art world, and especially for us to rethink the artistic practice. So I would love to hear from all of you. David, feel free to input anytime, and especially from Arnett, that is bringing an incredible agenda for these few days.
Thank you, Gigi. I think this is a very interesting topic. When people are talking about metaverse, we have our news team and we cover things happening in the metaverse and NFT all the time, but it's often there are so much, negative association with this term. And people always say like there are boundless possibilities in the metaverse. And I think it's equally interesting, if not more, to actually look into the limitation of the technology that we are facing right now. And this is not necessarily a bad thing, because all the technology, there are limitations around it, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a constraint to the creativity. And I really love performance art. I love conceptual art. I was thinking about this topic, like, what does it really mean to experience art in the metaverse? I mean, I have huge respect to Sam. That he mentioned that he was visiting the Venice Biennale, and then he actually was so moved by some of the works. And I was just thinking, like, what should people feel when they are creating art or experiencing art in the metaverse? And it's a very interesting question when you think about your avatar as a body. We all say like body is a very important aspect in the performance art. For example, Marina Abramovich, she always used her body either in the work of artists is present. She utilized her gaze and participants sitting across at a table that stare into each other. Or in her earlier works, she allowed people to use knives or weapons or whatever objects to do anything to her body until she was really injured and bleeding. And these works are so powerful that it makes me think like what is the body in the context of metaverse, because it's we definitely do have an identity in the metaverse, or so to speak, whenever we go into a virtual platform or a video game, however you want to put it. But they're also very different. um, it's a very different world. It depends on the platform. If you are in a virtual reality setting, or if you are in somewhere like Decentraland, which is a 3D virtual platform. I mean, in Decentraland, I find it very interesting that it's very much like mimicking in real life. Like I can't fly around. I can walk, run, or jump, but I can't fly, right? And there are some limitations, so it's like there is some kind of gravity built into the platform. Yeah, so I think these are very interesting question to think about. And would be so fascinating to think about how would performance art be like in the virtual world. That's why when I think of Xinyan's work, I love her work for her works of simplicity. The work titled Little Umbrella, she is basically just having a one-to-one meeting with a participant, taking a stroll. I'm talking about when she was doing this work before. But I convinced her to do this in Decentraland. So you can actually go and make a reservation with her, and then you take a stroll together in Decentraland, and we create this dedicated location for this stroll, which will happen at I think it's called the edge of Genesis City. It's the middle of nowhere, and then trying to recreate this interaction between, like, it's not two avatar, but it's like two human beings utilizing their avatar body. So I think this is a very interesting experiment. I think it's pretty groundbreaking in a sense. And I also have the privilege to invite Sasha Styles and the Verse. I think we also have Willie Guy with us today. I think Sasha and her vision for the verse is so pioneering that she is doing poetry as art, and claiming poetry as technology, and the verse, and we have many poets, artists who will be doing like pop-up poetry readings throughout the art week. So we actually is very honored that the Decentraland team designed a specific wearable for us. So if you see like someone walking around with a glowing aura, like a sparkle around the body, and wearing mostly black outfit, that's one of the poets or artists that we curated this time. And you might run into a poet that is doing like impromptu poetry reading. So I think this is such a interesting experiment. It reminds me of, for example, the happenings movement in the art history. We all know that in the late 50 and 60, which Alan Capro coined this term, happenings time. But the idea really is that to make art happen anywhere, anytime, and without any scripting, without any restrictions, and just improvise and be spontaneous, and try to explore what art really means in that context. And I think this is something that is very natural to the nature of Decentraland, because Decentraland is an open-ended virtual platform, and it's not like you have a purpose in the game that you have to do something to earn any points or fight some monsters. And I think it's a great place for artists to discover. And so I would like to actually hand the microphone to Sasha, and have her talk about what she thinks about in terms of her participation in the Art Week.
Oh, thank you, Jian. It's so nice to be here. Thank you to everyone at ArtNet and Decentraland for putting together this amazing week. We at the Verseverse are really excited to be part of it and really grateful and honored to be here with all of you. So just by way of a brief background, as Jian mentioned, so I'm a poet. I'm a lifelong poet, actually, who's also an artist. And since 2018, I've also been researching artificial intelligence and natural language processing, and various tools, technological tools, and digital tools that can be used to create poetry in slightly different ways than we normally think about poetry. And I've been actually publishing poems in the Metaverse since about 2020, and started minting NFT poems at the beginning of 2021, and was really fortunate to stumble into an amazing community of crypto writers, two of whom became really close friends and also co-founders of the Verseverse. My friends, the brilliant writers Anna Maria Caballero and Callan Iwamoto. And we really all kind of came together with the idea that, poems are so important, I think, to us culturally. We all know that we turn to poetry in times of need and times of great happiness and great sadness. So we know that culturally we value poems, but poems have never really been placed right alongside art in terms of value in other expressions. So we really wanted to see how we could use blockchain, use new media in different forms to put poetry right next to art, to imagine, what it might be like if poems could live next to art in museums and in culture and in our daily lives. And so that's really the mission and the thought behind the Verseverse, is to create a literary gallery, essentially, where all these thoughts can sort of be discussed, where we can think about and actually work towards creating poetic artworks that really celebrate the language arts in new ways. And if anyone's interested, we actually have a virtual home for the gallery at theverseverse.com, but we are a metaversal gallery, of course. So we were really delighted to have the opportunity to participate in Metaverse Art Week. We've had the experience a few times of being able to perform as a group of poets in the Metaverse in different places in the past. And it's always been a really incredible experience. I think many of us think of poetry as text printed on a page, but of course, there's also a wonderful tradition of spoken word poetry and slam poetry, and lots of different, very performative, immersive, and experiential manifestations for poetry. And of course, poems are rooted in the oral tradition. So, long before the advent of written language, performing poetry was really the only way to share stories and transmit them. So we really look at the opportunity to do things like these events that we've got planned this week in the Metaverse as a chance to kind of look at how we can, think back to those roots of this really important art form, while also thinking about how we can continue to evolve poetry, how we can use new media and technologies like blockchain protocol to make poetry more accessible than ever, to make it really tangible, to bring it into the lives of many more readers and new audiences who might not otherwise be encountering poems. So again, it's one of the reasons we're so happy and so grateful that ArtNet and Decentraland have helped us build this beautiful poetry garden, where we've already had a chance to convene and do some rehearsals and things like that. It really feels special to have a space in the Metaverse that can contain a lot of these ideas about poetry that we're all playing with and experimenting with. And just really quickly running through the schedule of events we've got for this week. So we're actually kicking things off with the Verse versus Metaversal Poetry Festival this afternoon at 12 PST, 3 EST. We've actually got an AI poetry performance where data poet Ross Goodwin will be joining us to live generate some AI poetry. And I'll talk more about that later this afternoon when we're all in the Metaverse together, but it's going to be a really fun event. We've got readings tomorrow. I think Anna Maria is reading at 11 o'clock Eastern, if I'm correct. We have a group reading with all the poets from the Verse coming together to share their works on Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. We have the legendary conceptual poet Christian Book, who's a core member of the Verse and really an innovator of poetry who does absolutely wild, beautiful experimental projects and has been doing this for decades. He's a consummate performer, and he's going to be actually performing a solo event at 6 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. And then I will be joined by my fellow poet Nathaniel Stern on Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern to do a reading of an AI generative poetry performance that we recently premiered on FX Hash. So we're going to be reading that and talking about generative code as a kind of performance. So lots coming up. And if you want to stay tuned, we have much more information about all that at the Verse on Twitter. And thanks again so much for inviting us. We're really happy to be here.
That's amazing, Sasha. And also anyone can check all the agenda in the events page. And before I pass the word to David, that I believe he has some very great points, I just wanted to mention that the profound topics that you touched, like really thinking about the roots of the contemporary art practice when we look back into historical art movements, I think it's always important that we understand that whatever we do today, including the metaverse, is a continuation of a practice of creativity we have been doing for many, many, many decades. It's not something that came out of nowhere. Another very cool point, I think, especially when you think about poetry, post art, and so many other practices that are not necessarily the visuals that are expected from all of us, but they require other levels of engagement. I think this is very interesting to take people out of their comfort zone, especially because we're so used in the 3D environments to be stimulated visually all the time. So trying to explore other languages is essential. And my third point is just about the idea of presence and absence, right? When we are like that ArtNet team touched upon, when we are doing performance, when we have the happening, also you do have this idea of your presence as an avatar, and re-understanding the presence of the body in the avatar is a completely new dynamic we are trying to understand and incorporate. So just wanted to bring those. David, go ahead. I think you have very good points and some other questions you would like to distribute among the other participants.
Thank you, Gigi. Great points brought up by everybody. I love what was brought up that you just mentioned, Gigi, from ArtNet. The referencing back to happenings, whether you're thinking of Fluxism or Dadaism or any of these recent but past schools of thought. I believe it's a resurgence. I believe it's coming back, and I talk about it quite a bit. Also, I wanted to mention this because in the Cash Labs gallery, in the space that's going to be launching tomorrow morning, there's several examples of this. But I really do believe that NFTs and the blockchain present a whole new opportunity for performance artists and for any form of artists whose practice is ephemeral, meaning that it exists in a very fleeting moment in time. There's a lot of practices that are performative. And I'd actually like to pass this over to Nick in a moment, because I believe there's some elements of photography and the photographic practice that are also ephemeral. I believe that Show Studio, for instance, has been innovators in capturing, the process of creating the look and live streaming a photo shoot or doing things of that nature. But similarly, if you go into the Cash Labs gallery tomorrow, you'll see pieces by Kenny Schachter, David Henry Nobody Jr., a whole bunch of different people who bring performance art to the blockchain and either do things live or perform live and in some way capture that via video and then ephemeralize that on the blockchain. So I think it's a really interesting conversation. Very excited to see, poetry artists bringing their practice to the blockchain. Sasha, very much enjoyed hearing from you and love the points brought up by ArtNet as well. Would love to pass it over to Nick and then perhaps also Sam, because I'm sure you're interested in this conversation as well, as this is quite poignant to the topics this year at ArtNet at Art Week. But Nick, would you like to talk at all about the idea of bringing ephemeral elements of your practice to the blockchain? Because I think that's quite relevant to the conversation today, and also quite relevant to what you're doing.
Yeah, I think so. I'm just really interested in what the speakers before me were saying. Really, fashion. I've always thought of it as probably the primary art form. One way of looking at art is how we express ourselves and how we say how we feel about the world. And fashion is actually, the first thing you see of somebody. It's the first moment that you start to understand what the human being standing in front of you is about. So I've always thought, that fashion is an incredibly important art form for all civilizations. I don't think there's ever been a civilization or a society that hasn't used fashion in some way to express, I don't know, whatever position within that society, sexual preference, whatever it is. So I've always thought that fashion was incredibly important to us as cultures and civilizations. So for me, it's I've always thought of it as art in every sense. And then the poetry, I'm like super interested. One of the things I wanted to ask, poetry is a kind of oral art form, but I'm sure everybody on this is aware of the kind of the Mid-Journeys and the Dalis and all these things, and how you type in words into an AI and it sends you back images, sort of basically from the kind of great artists that have lived, rehashed, so you can put in a whatever you want and say in the style of Gustav Klimt or Francis Bacon or Balthus or whoever you want, and stuff starts coming back. I think it's an incredibly interesting period in the creation of imagery. I was going to say, about the poetry. I'm working with a young British poet called Sunny Hall, who I think is super interesting. And we started putting his poems into DALI Mini or Crayon, which is one of these AIs that you put words into and send you images back. And it's quite incredible what comes back. And if you put the same line of poetry into Midjourney, what comes back, the imagery that comes back again is so stylistically different. So I wondered how poets would feel about this, because there is a reasonably big divide between being an oral artist and a visual artist. And maybe it's interesting now that with these new ways of expressing ourselves, new ways of creating art, that we actually can cross these boundaries that we sort of fall into over the years and accepted. I have my reservations about all the kind of AIs that you stick a word into and it sends you a picture back, simply because you just sort of think, what's going to happen to image making? This has been, because they've been around for, I don't know, a year, probably around that sort of time. What's going to be like in 10 years' time? And I'm not actually, I'm always very keen to find an AI, that can replace me. I'm quite interested to see what that would do. So I'm not negative about it. I'm not saying, oh no, we should go against these. I just find them fascinating, and they raise so many questions about what the future of image making is. You're pulling on the kind of history of art and imagery. About whether it's low art or high art, you're still assembling that. So I think there's something interesting in there, which I'd love to get some feedback from people from ArtNet and the people who are showing. It's just kind of I think it's a sort of fascinating time. Anyway, not what you wanted me to answer, David. So your question was, what do we do at Show Studio? The process, yes, fashion photography is a performative art form. How I move around the studio, the shapes that I physically create to therefore encourage the models to create them. So I express myself through using my body. And I started filming all of my shoots way back in the 1980s, just by putting a camera on a tripod, and a video camera on a tripod, and saying to 4 or 5 people in a room in the studio, look, I'm filming this. Is that okay? And of course, at the time, nobody minded at all. And I noticed over the years that a few times I had to go and review some of these films of my shoots that, I was a very performative artist. Physicality is an enormous part of what I do, and actually what I enjoy doing. It's a way, if you're standing in front of a model, you need to get them to move in a certain way. And the best way I've found to do that is to almost kind of show them with your own body what shapes you want. Some of the models tease me and say I kind of outmodel the models, but I really don't do it very well. But it is a way of doing it. So I've always thought fashion photography is a performative art form. And Show Studio came about in a way of me saying, I think what I'm seeing in working in fashion with brands like McQueen and Galliano and Yohji Yamamoto is so fascinating, but nobody's seeing this stuff. I go into a studio and there's 6 people in there: the hairdresser, the makeup artist, the stylist, the model, the art director. And that's about it. And these performances, this fashion theatre that's happening in front of you. Alexander McQueen transforming a bridegroom into a bride in 2 minutes with white paint and gaffer tape, and ripping his suit apart and gaffing it around his middle and making it into a wedding dress. They're bits of kind of fashion. I don't know, whatever, fashion theatre. Call them what you want. In a way, it doesn't really matter. We just call things so we can classify them. And I'm rather happy to have a world that isn't classified. But anyway, so it occurred to me that I was seeing a lot of things in my life which were not being seen. And when the internet trundled along in the mid-90s, it was quite obvious from the beginning that here was a platform at which you could start showing things. You could let the cameras, be live in your studio. Admittedly, right when we started, because Show Studio started in 2000. When we started it, you could only send out one very, very pixely image from a webcam every minute, which doesn't make a great performance. And this is exactly what happened on the Alexander McQueen bridegroom to bride thing. He said, "How long do you want me to take?" So I said, "Well, how long does it take to transform a bridegroom into a bride?" He said, "Well, 3 minutes." So I said, "Well, considering we're sending out one image every minute, how about making it last a bit longer?" So it was fairly challenging on the technology, but over the last 20 odd years, now we broadcast all of our shoots with 3 or 4 cameras and mixing desks and everything else, and it becomes a real way of letting the world see what happens in a fashion photographer's studio, and as much as we can, letting people sort of be part of that. I've always thought that if you walk around a gallery and you see a piece of art on a pedestal and you know nothing about the artist, nothing about the art, it's a very unsatisfying experience. If you walk around with a clever person who says to you, "Well, actually this isn't blah blah blah," and tells you all about it, it's much better. So if you have more information about the art and more information about the creation of the art, it's got to be better. So I've always thought, well, we can show the process of this, we can show the process of creating a piece of art. Let's do so. It's got to be better for the audience and for the artist and probably the art itself. So I'm very much for showing the process of creating art. I'm not saying that people who want to just kind of do it by themselves and not show anybody are wrong, but I just find it more sort of just kind of more fulfilling, to be honest, to show people exactly that you just don't waltz in and just click a camera and it's done. That you spend hours trying to find anything that's even worth looking at. And the process of that is actually the art itself in many ways. And that process doesn't, there's a lot of rubbish spoken about, the decisive moment in photography. Well, actually, the whole of the process, from the moment the little grave idea pops into your head, the little twinge of a desire, to the moment you see it as a billboard campaign across the country you're living in, every step on that process is equally important. It isn't just the moment, in my opinion, where the camera goes off. That's actually got very little to do with it. It is almost inversely the one moment where you see nothing, because the camera's shutter goes off and the flash goes off and you can't possibly see anything. So I would sort of argue that actually we've all looked certainly at photography in the wrong way. Anyway, I hope that answered your question, David.
It absolutely did.
Roy answered a whole bunch of other questions that weren't asked. But,
no, it's fabulous. It's fabulous. I think that was amazing insight.
It was amazing.
And I'm sure is grateful for it. I noticed that Willie and Sasha were raising their hand. I'm wondering if the two of you wanted to respond or keep that conversation going. I think this is fabulous.
Oh, that was an amazing response, and so wide ranging and so interesting. And I don't want to take too much time. I wanted to pipe in with just maybe a few thoughts on AI and generative creativity, because that's sort of my area of well, maybe not expertise, but it's my area of obsession. And it's been interesting because both in my career as a poet, career maybe is not the right word, but in my time as a poet, I've done a lot of work with more conventional writers, and I've been in a lot of conventional workshops and things like that, where I've brought in AI work and generative work and different approaches that are using technology in ways that are perhaps unfamiliar. And I think I've encountered a lot of resistance
from people who sort of, think of AI in a sort of turnkey way, that you're just pushing a button and there's no craft involved, or there's no sort of process or methodology. And the more that I've immersed myself in the AI world, and I've used large language models in my own writing, the more that I realize it's a craft unto itself. And I actually do think of it as being sort of, there's the evolution from painting to photography. Well, maybe this is the evolution from, one way of writing to a new way of writing, or, we can think about it as sort of that shift from oral to written language. Maybe this is a shift from written to generative language, where there's a very, very interesting conceptual conversation to be had about what it means to work with AI as a writer and as a creative in lots of different ways. And that's a whole separate Twitter space. And actually, we've had these discussions many times at the Verse, and it's always a really fascinating topic. But I just wanted to pipe in and say personally, my experience using those tools, like being in the metaverse, is just that it really opens up, new worlds of possibilities, and kind of helps, push the boundaries of what I thought language was, or what I thought poetry was, in a way that is really exciting and enthralling. So just very, very quickly, also mentioning that at the Verse, we have a whole section of the gallery that is dedicated to what we call algorithmic authorship. And it really is an experimental playground where we're helping writers sort of find access to tools that they might not otherwise have access to, or perhaps might not know how to use, or be intimidated by. And we really do, want to help onboard writers to kind of show how these tools can be used in lots of different ways. And it's been a really fun project and a really fun aspect of what we're doing at the Verse. And I wanted to just quickly pass it over to Wiley Geist, because he's also done some really beautiful work with AI. So just maybe wanted to get your thoughts super fast, Wiley.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, and the field is such an interesting one, and I'm really glad, Nick, that you asked this question, because I think what's interesting about working with AIs is that it's not a tool, it's not something that you use to sort of lazily create something for you that you don't actually have to put the work into. I think that Sasha would probably agree with me on this, that working with AI it feels more like a collaboration. It feels like a relationship. You're working partner almost, and you're working with these AI tools, whether it's a GPT-3 language model, or it's one of the text to image models like you mentioned, Nick, like Midjourney or DALL-E or something. And you're working kind of against the restrictions and the limitations of those systems as well. So the really interesting projects, I feel, are the ones that kind of move about in those kind of strange kind of liminal spaces between human authorship and AI products, and really kind of, it's almost, as you were mentioning about the process of Alexander McQueen kind of producing, sort of visualizing and documenting that kind of process involved. And I feel like the way that I work, particularly with GPT-3 and with the visual AI models, is that kind of, there is this sense of performance about it, and there's this collaborative performance going on, and I think there's something that we could document better, and certainly in the future, in projects like the Verse, and these collaborations with Decentraland involving performances and written work and visual manifestations of writing are some of the most interesting things in the space in total. I think just in general as well, poetry being embraced by this event and this week is a really important thing. I think that, unlike perhaps fashion or photography or visual art, I think the sort of the art of writing, and particularly the art of poetry, has sort of suffered in a general cultural sense over the last sort of 60, 70 years, from a time when poets were household names to a sort of place of not extinction, but certainly sort of popular cultural kind of limbo, let's say. So I think that the stuff that the Verse is doing, the stuff that I'm involved in as well, hopefully will go some way to kind of putting it back in its rightful place in amongst the other arts. And I'll stop speaking now, David.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for that, both of you. I really like where this conversation is going. And actually, just before we end it off, because I actually have to pass it back to Gigi to wrap things up shortly. I would love to pass it over to the one, the only Toonpunk, Sam, because I know that this conversation is very much going in the direction of the curational statement this year. The world is made of code. We're taking physical practice and we're digitizing them. We're taking digital practices and we're implementing them into and integrating them into physical practices. Do you have any thoughts that you want to wrap up today's conversation with? I'd love to pass it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, wow, so many amazing speakers, and my mind is shooting off in so many different chains of thought. I'd just like to say one last thing, I guess. There's a piece in the Plaza which is showing silent movies from 100 years ago, and it's there to highlight the fact that technology creates new mediums and new movements in art, and the metaverse is a new medium that we have to play with, and I'm sure we'll see decades of innovation coming out of this medium. And the last thing, just really quickly about poetry, because I thought this a lot when everyone was talking. For me, it's all about storytelling, and poets were the original storytellers, and they created virtual worlds for people before we had any technology. So respect, it's kind of, for me, the purest art form there is.
I knew Sam would just bring something genius that touched our heart. Thanks, Sam. So I would like to mainly thank everyone present today. I think this was such an insightful and deep conversation. I think Twitter Spaces, they should be a place for deep conversations that really make us think, provoke our thoughts. And also, I would like to invite everyone for the other Twitter Spaces we'll be doing. So today was our first one, but we have an agenda of one Twitter Space a day, same time. And tomorrow, the topic will be unframing art in the spatial web. The day after, we're going to talk about an open air museum experience. We're going to think a little bit more about the installations per se. The next day, we're going to have preserving heritage in Web3 with the Frida Kahlo family. It's an amazing project. I would invite you to be present and listen and participate. And our last Twitter space on 28th is art and social good in Web3. So I hope you all can come with us in this journey during the next 5 days. And thank you so much. Please, I open for the final words if anyone wants to add something special.
I just want to chime in and just thank everybody for taking the time out of their day to join us here on Spaces. I know that there is a lot of noise going on in this space, people talking about the merge, things going on. But at the end of the day, for citizens, just about being able to come together and express ourselves. So this is a chance for us to come together and go to the museum together. We can see a bunch of amazing exhibits from the comfort of our homes. I encourage you all to go through the incredible programming that all of our partners have put together. A lot is happening over the next 5 days, and I encourage you to take some time out of your day to go and check it all out. And once again, I really just have to send flowers to virtual flowers for now, but to Sam, to Gigi, to Maria, to Decentraland, the whole team for everything they're doing. Really, really beautiful work. I know that it's not easy. I know how much work goes into it. There's so much happening behind the scenes that people don't see. So I hope that you all just take a moment. I'm running around right now. If you just go to Decentraland, the events page, you just go to play.decentraland.org and go to the events page. You'll be able to go straight in and witness some of these beautiful experiences. I'm looking at a massive scale sculpture right now in the metaverse, and you can too. So come and join us. Decentraland has been tweeting for a majority of this. Go to the Decentraland Twitter, click through links, explore, enjoy, and also always worth mentioning, because I know there's a lot of community members in the crowd right now. Also take a moment and check out all the stuff that the community is doing, because every time we do one of these events, Fashion Week, Art
Totally.
Week, there's such incredible activations. I know during Fashion Week, I was blown away by some of the activations that I had no idea were going on, even though I was so involved in a lot of the planning. But there were such incredible community activations taking place as well. So explore the events page. The events page is not just for the official activations, it's also for the community activations. There's some really beautiful things taking place. And once again, happy Art Week, everybody. I'll pass it back to Gigi to close us out.
No, and happy Art Week. And again, community, congratulations. You made amazing things. Content team, congratulations. You made an incredible experience happen. And more, I want to see the community involved and bringing all their magic. So thank you all for today. And I hope to see you tomorrow in our next Twitter space. Enjoy the Art Week.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Hope
so
to see you
much.
all in Decentraland.
See you in the Art Week.
See you there. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye bye.